I'm Tracy, 28 years old. For most of my life, my family treated me like their personal maid. My parents worshipped my older sister, Amelia, while I was just the girl who cooked, cleaned, and stayed invisible. Little did they know I was building an empire while washing their dishes. The ultimate payback came last Christmas when the powerful CEO they desperately wanted to impress turned to me and said, "Boss, we need your approval on this." While I share this story, I'd love to know where you're watching from. Drop a comment below and don't forget to subscribe if my journey resonates with you. I grew up in a middle-class suburb of Boston, in a house that looked perfect from the outside. My father worked as a financial advisor at a local bank, and my mother was a real estate agent. They weren't wealthy, but they were ambitious and obsessed with appearances. My sister Amelia was 5 years older than me, and from my earliest memories, she was the golden child. Our family photos tell the story better than I can. In nearly every picture, Amelia stands front and center, usually wearing something new and expensive, while I'm either partially cropped out or dressed in her hand-me-downs. This wasn't just about clothes, it was about attention, love, and value. "Tracy, go help your mother with the dishes," my father would say during family dinners, while Amelia talked about her day at school. I was 7 when I realized this pattern wasn't normal. At my friend Sarah's house, everyone cleared their own plates and took turns with chores. But in our house, I was the designated helper. Actually, helper is too generous a word. I was the worker. By the time I was 10, I could prepare an entire meal for 4 people, not because I loved cooking, but because my mother insisted I needed to learn practical skills. Meanwhile, Amelia was enrolled in piano lessons, tennis camp, and private tutoring to boost her already good grades. "Your sister is going to be somebody important someday," Mom would say, loud enough for me to hear from the kitchen. "She needs every advantage we can give her." I excelled at math and showed an early aptitude for computers, teaching myself basic programming from library books. When I asked for a computer for Christmas in 6th grade, my parents looked at me like I'd asked for a spaceship. "What would you do with a computer? Play games all day?" my father scoffed. 3 months later, they bought Amelia a laptop for her high school graduation, even though she barely used it except for social media. My 12th birthday is etched in my memory. I had been hinting for weeks about having a small party with a few school friends. The day before my birthday, I overheard my parents in the kitchen. "We really can't afford a party right now. We just paid for Amelia's Europe trip with her French class." "I know," my mother sighed. "We'll make it up to Tracy next year." They never did. Instead, I got a cupcake with a candle and a card signed by the 3 of them. Amelia brought me a keychain from Paris as an afterthought. I started working at 14, unofficially helping our neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, with her garden for $5 an hour. By 15, I had a legitimate part-time job at the local grocery store, stocking shelves after school. My parents took this as a sign of my limited ambitions. "At least Tracy is practical," they'd tell relatives. "Not everyone can be as academically gifted as Amelia." What they didn't know was that I was saving every penny. I discovered a summer coding camp that cost $800, and I was determined to attend. When I finally had enough money and told my parents about the camp, their response was predictable. "That's a waste of money, honey. Why not save for a car instead? Something useful." I went anyway. Those 2 weeks changed my life. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who valued what I could do. My project won first place in the competition camp, and the instructor pulled me aside. "You have a rare talent, Tracy. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." I came home with a newfound confidence that my parents quickly tried to extinguish. The certificate of achievement I had proudly displayed on my wall mysteriously disappeared during one of my mother's cleaning sprees. When I confronted her, she claimed she thought it was just camp paperwork. Through my high school years, the pattern continued. Amelia went to an expensive private college to study law, with my parents covering all expenses. Meanwhile, I stayed up late every night studying, determined to earn scholarships for my education. The guidance counselor suggested I apply to community college since my parents hadn't saved for me. "Your sister is going to be a lawyer," they'd tell people proudly. And when asked about me, they'd simply say, "Tracy is good with computers. She'll find something." I was more than good with computers. I was exceptional. But in my family, that didn't matter. I was the maid, the cook, the invisible one. And I was determined to change that, even if they never noticed. Against all expectations, including my parents, I earned a full scholarship to MIT to study computer science. The day the acceptance letter arrived, I ran into the house bursting with excitement. Mom, Dad, I got into MIT, full scholarship. I waved the letter in the air. My mother glanced up from her magazine. That's nice, dear. Did you remember to defrost the chicken for dinner? My father was slightly more enthusiastic. Well, that's unexpected. Good for you. Then he immediately returned to watching television. Meanwhile, Amelia's acceptance into Harvard Law School 3 years earlier had warranted a champagne celebration and announcement sent to every relative and family friend. Packing for college was a solitary affair. While Amelia had received new luggage, bedding, and a shopping spree before leaving for school, I packed my belongings in 2 secondhand suitcases I'd bought myself. My mother did offer to help, but mainly to remind me which kitchen tools were mine to take, since I'd be cooking for myself now. MIT was liberating. For the first time, I was judged solely on my abilities, not compared to my sister. My roommate Jessica was a fellow computer science major from Seattle, with wild red hair and an infectious laugh. You code like you're conducting an orchestra, she told me after seeing me work on a project. Your fingers barely stop moving. We became inseparable, spending countless nights solving problem sets and discussing tech ethics over cheap pizza. When Jessica learned about my family situation, she was appalled. They don't deserve you, she said simply. We're your family now. To cover expenses not included in my scholarship, I worked 3 different jobs: mornings at the campus coffee shop, weekends at the university IT help desk, and evenings freelancing as a web developer for local businesses. I slept about 4 hours a night on average, but I was happier than I'd ever been. During my junior year, I landed a coveted internship at a financial technology startup called DataSecure. The company was developing innovative security protocols for banking applications, and despite being only an intern, I spotted a vulnerability in their code during my second week. Most people would have just ignored it or waited for someone else to find it. You just saved us from a potential disaster, my supervisor, Adam, said after I nervously pointed it out. By the end of the internship, they offered me a part-time position I could work remotely while finishing school. For the first time, I was earning real money doing what I loved. That summer, instead of going home, where I'd inevitably be put to work cooking and cleaning for the family, I stayed in Cambridge with Jessica. We shared a tiny, sweltering apartment and spent our free time developing a mobile app that simplified financial security for small businesses. This could be something big, Jessica said one night as we refined the user interface. We should consider making this our actual job after graduation. The idea was both terrifying and exhilarating. I'd always been told to find something practical and stable. Starting a company was neither. When I called home that summer, the conversations were predictably short and one-sided. Amelia got an internship at Wilson & Craft, my mother gushed, referring to a prestigious law firm. They almost never take first-year law students, but they made an exception for her. Her professor says she could make partner by 35 if she stays on track. That's great, I said, waiting for her to ask about my summer. She didn't. Anyway, when are you coming home? The gutters need cleaning and your father's back has been acting up. I made excuses about summer classes and project deadlines. The truth was, I was laying the groundwork for my future, one that wouldn't include being the family maid. By senior year, our app had gained attention from several angel investors. One meeting stands out in my memory. Jessica and I presented our concept to a panel of 5 men in their 50s. "This is impressive work," said one, leaning forward. "Who's the lead developer?" "That would be Tracy," Jessica said proudly. The man looked surprised. "Really?" You did all this coding yourself? I nodded, used to the skepticism. Every line. We walked away with our first investment of $50,000 and a valuable lesson. We would always have to work twice as hard to be taken half as seriously. When graduation approached, my parents finally showed interest in my college experience, primarily because they couldn't avoid attending the ceremony without appearing neglectful to their friends and extended family. So, what are your plans after graduation? There are some entry-level IT positions at the bank, not glamorous but stable. Actually, I said, taking a deep breath, I'm starting my own company with Jessica. The silence was deafening. A company? What kind of company? A financial security software firm. We've already secured initial funding. My mother got on the extension. Tracy, be reasonable. You need something stable with benefits. This startup nonsense is just a phase. You'll waste your degree. Meanwhile, Amelia was being praised for accepting a junior associate position at a corporate law firm, a sensible career move. The double standard was infuriating, but not surprising. At graduation, my parents spent most of the time telling relatives about Amelia's law firm job and her new apartment in downtown Boston. I was an afterthought, the other daughter who did something with computers. Little did they know that the something with computers would change everything. Jessica and I officially launched FinSecure 2 weeks after graduation. Our office was her uncle's garage, which we converted into a workspace with second-hand desks and the fastest internet connection we could afford. We lived on ramen noodles, coffee, and determination. The first 6 months were brutal. We pitched to 27 different investors and received 24 rejections. The 3 who didn't immediately reject us strung us along for weeks before eventually passing. Our initial seed money was dwindling fast. Maybe this was a mistake, I said one night after a particularly harsh rejection. We were sitting on the floor of our makeshift office, empty pizza boxes surrounding us. Maybe my parents were right. Jessica threw a crumpled napkin at me. Don't you dare. We're on to something important here. They just don't see it yet. She was right. The problem wasn't our product, but our approach. We were trying to compete directly with established security firms instead of focusing on our unique innovation, a proprietary algorithm I had developed that detected unusual patterns in financial transactions before they became security breaches. We pivoted our business model and targeted small to medium financial institutions that couldn't afford enterprise-level security solutions but desperately needed protection. Within 2 months, we had our first 3 clients. This is just the beginning, Jessica said as we celebrated with actual wine instead of the cheap beer we'd been subsisting on. We're going to revolutionize financial security for the underserved market. Our reputation grew steadily. A trade magazine featured our algorithm in a technical piece that caught the attention of larger players in the industry. Suddenly, the investors who had rejected us were calling back, interested in what they had missed. 1 year into our venture, we secured a significant round of funding that allowed us to move into a real office space and hire our first employees. I remember standing in the empty office, keys in hand, hardly believing it was real. CEO Tracy, Jessica said, bumping her shoulder with hers, has a nice ring to it. Co-CEOs, I corrected her. Jessica shook her head. You're the technical genius and the visionary. I am better at operations and client relations. You should be CEO. I'll take COO. After some back and forth, I accepted the title. At 23, I became the chief executive officer of a growing financial security firm. We hired 4 employees that first month, including Jackson Moore, a brilliant security analyst with a background in both finance and cybersecurity. Your algorithm is revolutionary, he told me during his interview. The way it predicts potential security breaches based on micro-patterns is unlike anything I've seen. Jackson quickly became an invaluable team member and was promoted to senior management within 6 months. As our company grew, so did my confidence. For the first time in my life, I was valued for my intelligence and abilities rather than my usefulness as a household helper. 2 years after founding FinSecure, we expanded to 20 employees and moved to a larger office in downtown Boston. Our client list included dozens of credit unions, community banks, and financial service providers across the country. We were profitable and growing. Through it all, I never shared the details of my success with my family, not because I wanted to hide it, but because they never asked. Our conversations remained superficial, with my parents dominating the discussion with news about Amelia's latest achievements at her law firm. When I did visit home, which was rare, nothing had changed. My mother still expected me to help with dinner and cleaning. My old bedroom had been converted into a home office for my father, so I slept on the pull-out couch. Amelia's room, however, remained perfectly preserved, even though she had her own apartment in the city. Tracy works for some tech company, was how my mother introduced me to her friends when I encountered them. She never bothered to learn the name of my company or what we actually did. In stark contrast to my family life, my professional life was thriving. By our 3rd year, FinSecure had caught the attention of major financial institutions. Our breakthrough came when we signed BlackRock Financial, one of the largest investment management corporations in the world. Their head of security had approached us after a conference where I presented our latest security innovations. "We need this level of protection for our clients," he said. "Name your price." The contract was worth millions and put FinSecure on the map. We expanded to 50 employees and opened a second office in New York. I purchased a beautiful apartment in a historic building in Boston's Back Bay neighborhood, with high ceilings and large windows that let in abundant natural light. It was everything I had dreamed of having while growing up in my parents' cramped house, where I never had space for my own. My personal life took a backseat to building the company, but I was content. I had a small circle of close friends, including Jessica, who had become like family to me. We worked hard but made time for occasional vacations and self-care. I learned to set boundaries and prioritize my well-being, something I had never been allowed to do in my parents' home. I was featured in Forbes' 30 Under 30 list for financial technology, and our innovative security solutions had become industry standards. Throughout this growth, I remained private about my success. My employees knew me as a fair, demanding, but supportive leader who valued innovation and integrity above all. Few knew about my background or family dynamics. I preferred to be judged on my work rather than my story. Jackson Moore had risen to become our chief security officer and my right hand. His insights had helped shape our expansion strategy, and his relationship with clients, particularly BlackRock Financial, had been instrumental to our growth. "We're changing the industry," he told me one evening as we reviewed quarterly results, "and we're just getting started." I nodded, thinking how far I had come from the girl who was only valued for how well she could clean the kitchen. If only my family could see me now. But then again, would they even recognize my accomplishments for what they were? Despite my professional success, my relationship with my family remained unchanged. If anything, it worsened, as my limited availability for family obligations made me even more of a disappointment in their eyes. Thanksgiving of that year marked a particularly painful example. I arrived at my parents' house after closing a major deal that morning, exhausted but proud of what my team had accomplished. As soon as I walked through the door, my mother thrust an apron at me. "Thank goodness you're finally here. The potatoes need mashing and the gravy isn't going to stir itself," she said, not even bothering with a proper greeting. No hello, no how are you, no questions about my life or work. Just immediate deployment to kitchen duty while Amelia sat in the living room chatting with our father and extended family. "Mom, I just drove 2 hours after a really long week. Can I at least put my bag down and say hello to everyone first?" I asked, trying to keep the irritation from my voice. She looked affronted. "We're all tired, Tracy. Amelia worked until 9 last night preparing her case files, but you don't hear her complaining. The turkey will be ready in 20 minutes. I bit my tongue and put on the apron. From the living room, I could hear my father proudly telling my uncle about Amelia's recent victory in court. "Youngest associate to lead a corporate defense case at the firm," he boasted. "They're already talking about fast-tracking her to partner." Meanwhile, I was in the kitchen peeling potatoes like a scullery maid. The irony wasn't lost on me that my company had just closed a security contract worth more than what Amelia's law firm would bill in an entire year. After dinner, which I had helped prepare, serve, and would inevitably be expected to clean up after, Amelia held court in the living room talking about her new boyfriend, Daniel. He's the CFO at BlackRock Financial. Only 34 and already controlling billions in assets. We met at a charity gala last month. I nearly choked on my water. BlackRock Financial was our biggest client. I'd personally met with their executive team multiple times, though apparently not with Daniel. That's a prestigious firm, my father said approvingly. They only hire the best and brightest. Daniel says they're implementing a revolutionary new security system, very technical, but it's supposed to save them millions in potential fraud prevention. I suppressed a smile. She was talking about our system, the one I had designed. "What about you, Tracy?" my aunt asked politely. "Are you still doing that computer thing?" Before I could answer, my mother jumped in. "Tracy works for some tech startup. Very small operation from what I understand." "I'm actually the CEO," I said quietly. My father laughed. CEO, customer service representative, social media manager, these tech companies give everyone fancy titles these days. The conversation quickly turned back to Amelia and Daniel. I excused myself to start clearing the dishes, a task no one else seemed to notice needed doing. Later that evening, as I was washing dishes alone in the kitchen, Amelia came in to refill her wine glass. "So, this company you work for, what's it called again?" "Venture," I replied, scrubbing at a particularly stubborn pot. She shrugged. "Never heard of it. Daniel says cybersecurity is the future, though. Maybe your little company will get acquired by someone substantial eventually." "Maybe," I said confidently. "Anyway, Daniel and I are thinking of buying a summer house in the Hamptons next year. His year-end bonus should cover the down payment." As she walked away, I wondered what she would say if she knew that my little company was the one protecting her boyfriend's firm from losing millions to security breaches. The thought made me smile, despite my frustration. When I prepared to leave the next morning, my mother handed me a container of leftovers and a list. "What's this?" I asked, looking at the paper. "Just some things I need you to take care of before Christmas. The gutters need cleaning, the guest room needs new curtains, and I've been meaning to organize the basement. Since you're not as busy as Amelia, I thought you could help out." I stared at her in disbelief. "Mom, I run a company with over 100 employees. I'm actually extremely busy." She waved her hand dismissively. "Oh, playing with computers all day can't be that demanding. Amelia works 14-hour days on complex legal cases. That's real work." I didn't argue. What was the point? In their eyes, I would always be the less successful daughter, useful only for household chores, regardless of my actual achievements. When I returned to Boston, I threw myself back into work, channeling my frustration into expanding our company further. We were developing a new security protocol that could potentially revolutionize how financial institutions protected sensitive customer data. During a video conference with our New York team, Jessica noticed my distraction. "Family visit that bad, huh?" she asked after the call ended. "The usual," I sighed. Apparently being CEO of a multi-million-dollar company doesn't excuse me from cleaning the gutters. Jessica knew my family situation well. "You know, you could just tell them."
"Show them your Forbes feature. Let them see what you've built." I shook my head. They wouldn't believe it. Or worse, they'd suddenly become interested in my life for all the wrong reasons. "Your call," she said. "But someday they're going to realize exactly who you are. And I want front row seats for that show." Little did I know that day would come sooner than I expected, and in the most dramatic way possible. 2 weeks before Christmas, I was in the middle of a critical meeting with potential investors when my phone began vibrating incessantly with calls from my mother. After the 6th call in 30 minutes, I excused myself briefly to answer. "Tracy, finally," my mother exclaimed. "I've been trying to reach you all morning." I'm in the middle of an important meeting, Mom. Is everything okay? Is someone hurt? I asked, concerned about the urgency. Everything's fine, but we need to discuss Christmas arrangements, she said, as if this constituted an emergency. You need to come home earlier this year, at least 3 days before Christmas Eve. I pinched the bridge of my nose. That might be difficult. We're closing several major contracts before the holiday break, and I had planned to fly in on the 23rd. That won't work, she said firmly. We're hosting a special Christmas dinner this year. Daniel's family will be joining us along with some executives from his company. It's very important for your father's business connections as well. I could already see where this was heading. And you need me to help with preparations? Well, of course, she said, as if it were obvious. Amelia will be busy entertaining Daniel and his family. They're very important people, Tracy. The Moores are practically Boston royalty. Moore. Something clicked in my mind. Daniel's last name is Moore? Yes, Daniel Moore. His father sits on several corporate boards, and his uncle was a state senator. This dinner could be very beneficial for everyone's careers. By everyone, she knew she meant my father and Amelia, not me. I have plans with friends in Florida this Christmas. I recalled the beach house Jessica and I had rented with some colleagues. We've been planning this trip for months. My mother's voice turned cold. Plans with friends? This is family, Tracy, and this dinner is important for your father's business and Amelia's relationship. Surely your little vacation can wait. It's not just a vacation, Mom. It's the only break I've had all year. I've been working nonstop. Working at what? That tiny tech job? Tracy, this is about supporting your family. Daniel could become part of our family, and these connections matter. Your sister has a real chance at building something substantial here. Each dismissive word stung, but I'd grown accustomed to the pain over the years. I considered my options. I could once again sacrifice my happiness for a family that didn't value me, or I could finally stand up for myself. I'll see what I can do, I said, non-committally. Good, my mother replied. We'll need help with the cooking, cleaning, and setting up the guest rooms. Your father's converting your room into additional guest space since Daniel's parents will need it, so you'll sleep on the sofa bed in the den. The injustice of it all crashed over me like a wave. Not only was I expected to be the unpaid help, but I wasn't even worthy of a proper place to sleep in my childhood home. How many people are we talking about? I asked, dreading the answer. Your sister's friends are spending Christmas here. It's only 22 people, she said, with a dismissive laugh. Nothing we can't handle if we all pitch in. By all, she meant me. Amelia would be too busy playing hostess, and my parents would be networking. I would be the one cooking for 22 people and cleaning up after them while sleeping on a lumpy sofa bed. That's a lot of people. Mom, maybe we should consider catering. She scoffed. And waste money when you're perfectly capable in the kitchen? Don't be ridiculous. Besides, Daniel mentioned how much he values home-cooked meals. It shows character. I took a deep breath. I'll need to check my work schedule and get back to you. There's nothing to check, Tracy. This is happening. I'll email you the menu I've planned and the guest list so you can prepare. We need you here by the 21st at the latest. Her tone left no room for discussion. After hanging up, I returned to my meeting, but I couldn't focus. All I could think about was how, at 28 years old, with all I had accomplished, I was still just the family maid in my parents' eyes. That evening, I called Jessica and explained the situation. So let me get this straight, she said, anger evident in her voice. They want you to cancel our vacation, which we've been planning for 6 months, so you can cook and clean for 22 people, including executives from BlackRock, who are probably our clients, all while sleeping on a sofa bed? Because your room is being given to strangers? That about sums it up, I sighed. And they still have no idea you're the CEO of the company that protects their precious Daniels firm from financial disaster? Nope. Jessica was quiet for a moment.
Tracy, I love you and I want what's best for you. But at some point, you have to stop setting yourself on fire to keep these people warm. She was right. I had built a successful company from nothing. I had earned respect in my industry. I had created a life I was proud of. Why was I still seeking approval from people who would never give it? You're right, I said finally. I'm going to Florida. Really? Jessica sounded surprised, but pleased. You're not going to cave? Not this time. But I'm not going to tell them yet. If I do, they'll just spend weeks trying to wear me down. I'll let them think I'm coming, and then I just won't be there. That's a bit passive-aggressive, Jessica noted. 28 years of conditioning is hard to break overnight. Baby steps. The next day, I called my mother back. I've arranged things at work. I'll be there on the 21st. Excellent, she said, sounding genuinely pleased for once. I knew you'd do the right thing. I've already started a shopping list for you. We'll need to deep clean the house before the guests arrive, and I was thinking you could prepare some dishes ahead and freeze them? Sure, Mom, I said, the lie bitter on my tongue. Whatever you need. As Christmas approached, my mother sent daily texts with expanding lists of tasks and reminders. The menu had grown to include 5 appetizers, 3 main courses, 7 side dishes, and 4 desserts. The guest list had expanded to include additional business associates. My father sent a single message: bring your good clothes. These are important people. Not once did anyone ask if I needed help, if this was a burden, or even if I had my own holiday wishes. I was simply the means to their perfect Christmas. 2 days before I was supposed to arrive at my parents' house, I boarded a plane to Florida with Jessica and 4 of our colleagues. As the plane took off, I turned off my phone, leaned back in my seat, and felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Merry Christmas to me, I whispered, looking out at the clouds below. The Florida sun was a welcome change from Boston's winter chill. Our beach house in Key West was perfect, a sprawling property with ocean views, a private pool, and enough bedrooms for everyone to have their own space. For the first time in years, I felt the tension in my shoulders begin to release. To freedom, Jessica toasted, on our first evening, raising a glass of champagne as we sat on the deck watching the sunset. Our colleagues, all close friends who had been with FinSecure since the early days, clinked glasses in agreement. To boundaries, I added with a smile. I had turned my phone back on, but set it to do not disturb, with exceptions only for work emergencies. The barrage of missed calls and increasingly frantic text messages from my mother went unread. I knew I would have to deal with the fallout eventually, but for now, I was giving myself permission to enjoy the holiday I deserved. We spent the next day on the beach, swimming in the crystal clear water and lounging under umbrellas with books and cocktails. It was exactly the break I needed after a year of intense work growing our company. On Christmas Eve morning, as we prepared a relaxed brunch on the terrace, my work phone rang. It was Jackson Moore, our chief security officer, calling from the emergency line that bypassed my do not disturb settings. Jackson, what's wrong? I answered immediately. Concerned about a potential security breach. Sorry to disturb your vacation, Tracy, his voice said tense. We have a situation with the BlackRock implementation.
Their system is flagging our latest security patch as malicious code and shutting down critical functions. Their entire trading platform is at risk if we don't resolve this in the next hour. I switched into CEO mode instantly. Have you tried the rollback protocol we established for emergency situations? Yes, but it's requiring executive authorization codes that only you have, he explained. I need your approval to implement the override sequence. Of course, I said, walking away from the group to find a quiet spot. I'll send the authorization codes immediately. Where are you now? Still in the office on Christmas Eve. There was an awkward pause. Actually, I'm at a client dinner. BlackRock invited several of their security vendors to a holiday gathering. It's a bit chaotic trying to handle this discreetly. In the background, I could hear the sounds of a large gathering, clinking glasses, multiple conversations, holiday music. Then I heard something that made my blood run cold. my mother's distinctive laugh. "Jackson, where exactly is this dinner taking place?" "At the home of one of our BlackRock contacts. I believe his girlfriend's parents are hosting, somewhere in the suburbs." A sick feeling settled in my stomach. "Is the address 247 Maple Avenue in Lexington?" Jackson sounded surprised. "Yes, actually. How did you know?" "Because that's my parents' house," I said quietly. There was a stunned silence on the other end. "Your parents? But that would mean—" His voice trailed off as he connected the dots. "Tracy, are you saying that Daniel Moore is Amelia's boyfriend?" "Yes," I confirmed. "And I'm guessing you're there as BlackRock's security consultant?" "This isn't a coincidence, Jackson," I added, my tone sharp. "It's not a coincidence at all. My family has no idea what I actually do for a living. They think I work for some small tech startup. They've never bothered to ask for details." "But how? I mean, you're featured in industry magazines. Your name is on our website. We've done press releases." "They don't exactly follow financial technology news, and they've never shown enough interest to Google me." The absurdity of the situation suddenly struck me. Here was my family hosting a lavish dinner to impress Daniel and his business associates, while I, the person whose security system protected their entire financial operation, was supposed to be cooking and cleaning for them. "Tracy, they're all here expecting you to have prepared dinner," Jackson said, the realization dawning on him. "Your mother keeps checking the kitchen and looking increasingly panicked." I couldn't help but laugh. "I bet she is. She's probably wondering how she's going to feed 22 important guests without her personal chef and maid." Jackson lowered his voice. "What do you want me to do? Should I say something?" I considered my options. I could continue my vacation and let them figure it out. I could call and make up an excuse about being delayed. Or I could finally pull back the curtain and reveal the truth about who I really was. "Jackson, I need you to do me a favor. Can you step outside and video call me in exactly 10 minutes? Make sure you're somewhere visible to everyone, especially my family and Daniel." "I can do that," he said, curiosity evident in his voice. "But what about the security override? There is no security emergency, is there?" I asked, suddenly suspicious. There was a pause. "No," he admitted. "Daniel mentioned you were supposed to be here cooking, but instead you were in Florida. He seemed concerned about how that reflected on the family, so I thought maybe you needed an excuse to explain your absence. A work emergency seemed appropriate." I was touched by his loyalty, but also annoyed at Daniel's presumption. "That was thoughtful in a misguided way, Jackson, but no more lies. It's time for some truth." 10 minutes later, my phone lit up with Jackson's video call. I answered immediately, making sure my beachfront setting was clearly visible in the background. "Jackson, what's the status update?" I asked professionally, loud enough for anyone nearby to hear. On screen, I could see he had positioned himself in my parents' living room, where most of the guests were gathered. I spotted my mother hovering anxiously near the kitchen door, my father making stilted conversation with an older couple, and Amelia clinging to the arm of a man I assumed was Daniel. "We need your authorization for the protocol adjustment, Ms. Bennett. As CEO, only you can approve changes of this magnitude." I saw my mother freeze at the word CEO. My father turned toward the sound of Jackson's voice, confusion written across his face. "Of course. I'll review the parameters now," I said, maintaining the professional facade. "BlackRock is our most valued client. We can't afford any security vulnerabilities." The room had grown quieter. Jackson slowly turned so that his camera captured more of the gathering. Daniel Moore had stepped forward, peering at the screen with interest. "Tracy," he said, recognition dawning on his face. "Tracy Bennett from FinSecure? You're the sister." I smiled pleasantly. "Hello, Daniel. I apologize for not being there to cook dinner for everyone as expected. As you can see, I had a prior commitment." My mother pushed her way into the frame, her face a mixture of confusion and anger. "Tracy, what is going on? Where are you? We have guests waiting and nothing is prepared."
I'm in Florida, Mom, on the vacation I told you about, the one you said was less important than me cooking and cleaning for your important guests. But, but, she sputtered, looking back and forth between me on the screen and Jackson. Daniel stepped closer. Mrs. Bennett, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Tracy isn't just an employee at some tech startup. FinSecure is one of our most critical security partners. Tracy is the founder and CEO. The color drained from my mother's face. My father had now joined the group, looking equally stunned. That's impossible, he said flatly. Tracy works for some small computer company. Jackson cleared his comfortable throat. Sir, FinSecure is a multi-million-dollar cybersecurity firm that protects financial institutions across the country. Tracy built the algorithm that safeguards BlackRock's entire trading platform. She's one of the most respected leaders in financial technology. Amelia pushed her way into view, her expression a mixture of disbelief and dawning horror. You're Daniel's boss? Not directly, I clarified. FinSecure is a vendor partner to BlackRock, but we work closely with their executive team on security implementation, which is why I recognized your name when Amelia mentioned her sister Tracy. Daniel added, I just never made the connection that you were the same person.
You're practically a legend in our industry. The silence that followed was deafening. My parents stood frozen, trying to reconcile their image of me, the less successful daughter, with the reality now staring them in the face. I should let you all get back to your evening, I said calmly. I'm sure you can figure out dinner arrangements. Perhaps order in. I hear the Italian place on Main Street delivers on holidays. Tracy, wait, my mother began. But I had already decided I'd given them enough of my time. Merry Christmas, everyone. Jackson will discuss the actual security protocols when you're back in the office. Enjoy your holiday. As I ended the call, I felt a strange mixture of satisfaction, relief, and sadness. I hadn't planned for the revelation to happen this way, but perhaps it was fitting. For years, they had refused to see me for who I really was. Now they had no choice. Jessica appeared at my side with a fresh glass of champagne. From your expression, I'm guessing the cat's out of the bag. I nodded, taking the glass gratefully. In spectacular fashion. Good, she said simply. Now maybe we can enjoy the rest of our vacation without your phone blowing up with requests for gravy recipes. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in years. To new beginnings, I said, raising my glass to the sunset. The days following Christmas passed in a blur of sunshine, good food, and better company. I had turned my personal phone off completely, needing space to process what had happened and what it meant for my relationship with my family moving forward. When we returned to Boston in the new year, I found myself both dreading and curious about the inevitable confrontation. Would my parents apologize? Would they suddenly want to be part of my life now that they knew I was successful? Would Amelia's attitude change now that she realized her little sister was a respected industry leader? I didn't have to wonder long. 3 days after our return, my office receptionist called to inform me that my parents and sister were in the lobby requesting to see me. Did they have an appointment? I asked, already knowing the answer. No, Miss Bennett. They insisted it was a family matter. After a moment's hesitation, I agreed to see them. Send them to conference room 3, please. I'll be there in 10 minutes. I took my time finishing an email and collecting my thoughts before heading to the meeting. Walking through the office, I was acutely aware of how different this world was from the one my family had always imagined for me. Employees nodded respectfully as I passed. My name was on the door of the corner office. The company I had built from nothing now occupied 3 floors of a prime downtown building. When I entered the conference room, my family stood awkwardly by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Boston skyline. My mother gasped slightly when she saw me, taking in my tailored suit and confident posture. Tracy, my father began, his voice uncharacteristically hesitant. This is quite impressive. Thank you, I said simply, gesturing for them to sit. What can I do for you? My mother's eyes were red-rimmed. Whether from tears or lack of sleep, I couldn't tell.
"We came to apologize," she said, tears now flowing freely. "We had no idea about all of this, about what you've accomplished." "You never asked," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "In all these years, neither of you ever showed any interest in my career or my life. You were too busy focusing on Amelia." My sister flinched at that, looking down at her hands. "I didn't know either," she said quietly, "about any of this." "Of course you didn't. You were too busy accepting the preferential treatment to notice how unfairly I was treated." "That's not fair," my father protested weakly. "Isn't it?" I asked. "Tell me, Dad, when was the last time you asked about my work? When was the last time either of you treated me as anything other than free household help?" They exchanged guilty glances, unable to answer. Christmas was the final straw. Not only was I expected to cook and clean for 22 people, but I wasn't even worthy of a proper place to sleep in my childhood home. You gave my room to strangers while I was supposed to sleep on a sofa bed? And why? Because in your eyes, I wasn't important enough to deserve better?
They asked questions about my company, about how I had built it, about my life now. Questions they should have been asking all along. I answered honestly, but maintained an emotional distance that felt necessary for my own protection. When they finally left, promising to do better and asking for another chance, I felt exhausted but oddly peaceful. I hadn't forgiven them, that would take time, but I had stood my ground and spoken my truth. Over the following months, our relationship entered a new, cautious phase. My parents made efforts to connect with me on my terms. My mother no longer asked me to help with household chores when I visited. My father actually read articles about my industry and asked thoughtful questions about my work. Amelia struggled the most with the new dynamic. Her identity had been built around being the successful, favored daughter. Now she had to reconcile that with the reality that her little sister was a respected business leader. Eventually, she made peace with it, and we began to build a relationship based on mutual respect rather than the old hierarchy. Find Secure continued to grow. We expanded internationally, opening offices in London and Singapore. Our security protocols became the industry standard, and the algorithm I had developed was now protecting trillions of dollars in assets worldwide. As my professional success increased, I made sure to maintain balance in my personal life. I bought a house on the coast where I could wake up to the sound of waves. I cultivated friendships with people who valued me for who I was, not what I could do for them. I learned to set boundaries and honor my own needs, lessons that had come at a high emotional cost. The journey from family maid to respected CEO taught me that true freedom doesn't come from external validation or even success. It comes from within, from valuing yourself enough to demand respect, from setting boundaries with those who would take advantage, and from building a life that reflects your own values rather than others' expectations. My story isn't about revenge or even vindication. It's about finding the courage to break free from toxic patterns and create a life of authentic connection and purpose. The greatest victory wasn't the moment my family discovered my success. It was the moment I realized I no longer needed their approval to feel whole. Have you ever had to set boundaries with family members who couldn't see your true value? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if my journey resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength in unexpected places. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, your worth isn't determined by how others treat you, but by how you choose to treat yourself.